of the so-called gangs had visited Push. But when it came time for them to come, they wanted to come, and they did come. But he admitted, we really are at a little loss to know what to do for them, because they don't have the power or the knowledge to transform human life. I'm not knocking us, Reverend. I'm not putting us down, Reverend. Please don't misunderstand me. But there is no white man's school of theology that intended from the beginning to bring you to God. If you got to God, you got him on your own. They didn't intend to bring you there. If you found God, it was because you were looking for him. But it's not because they taught you. They gave you empty philosophy, moral jargon, doctrine, rituals, and then sent you out to do what? To entertain people? To find new ways to bring music to the church so that the people can jump and shout and whatnot? No, you talk to me, because that's not what church is for. Jesus didn't have no timpani five walking with him. He didn't have no guitar, no banjo, no drum, no singing group with Jesus, getting on down while the master was working out. Jesus didn't have none of that. Jesus had a pure word with power in it from God. Prophet Muhammad was a simple man, but the revelation of this Quran with the spirit of Muhammad enabled him to transform human life. Malcolm had that power. I loved him so much. I never had a father. I never knew my father. My poor mother tried to rear me as best she could. She was such a strong black woman with no man in the house. But when I met the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I met a man. Somebody that I, as a young man, could pattern my life after. And right after I met the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I met Malcolm, and I heard Malcolm preach. And I never heard a man talk like that in my life. Such boldness, such strength. I can imagine how some of your minds are blown when you hear me so boldly. You don't get boldness on your own. Malcolm didn't come to Elijah Muhammad bold. He got bold when he met a bold man. I got bold when I met a bold black man. I always wanted to be brave and strong, but I was like that cowardly lion in the woods. I needed somebody to give me a dose of courage. So when I met the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm, I was meowing. Meow. I was trying to roar, you know what I mean, but it just wouldn't come out. Like some of you. You really want to be a man. You really want to stand up. You really want to help your people, but you don't know how. You've been in church, but you don't know how. You got a PhD, but you don't know how. You've been in the lodge, but you don't know how. You've been in secret fraternities, but you don't know how. It's all right not to know, but it's not all right not to know, and not to know that you don't know, and not to seek the knowledge after you know you don't know. I loved Malcolm because to me the greatest man in my life was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And the motive that Elijah Muhammad used was his mission from God to resurrect us from mental, moral, spiritual, social, economic, and political death. That was the motive. But he had another motive sitting up under that motive. Like there's a root and then there's a tap root. You may think you're at the root, but there's another root below that root. Like there's a meaning under the meaning, under the meaning, under the meaning. And if you keep going far enough under the meaning, you'll find God. But surface dwellers will never find God. Surface dwellers will only find that which is on the surface. All riches are buried. And anybody that wants to become rich and doesn't want to dig deep into the earth for its treasures, or deep into the ocean for its treasures, or deep into the consciousness of self, or deep into the reservoir of knowledge, will never get wealthy with wisdom. If you just want to be a surface dweller, satisfied with little, then there's a little on the surface for everybody. But if you want to be like God, you got to keep digging for more and more knowledge. Malcolm had an insatiable desire to learn. He was a voracious reader. Everything of value he could get his hands on, he read. But he didn't just read to read to read to quote. He read with understanding because he was given a criterion by which he could judge the knowledge that he received. Most of you are like intellectual pigs. I'm going to say that again. Most of you are like intellectual hogs. See, a hog has no digestive system. The cow will chew it up here. It has 3 digestive systems. It's getting it together. And every time it's digesting, it's separating this from that, that only the best will get down to become a part of the body, and the rest will be cast out as waste. But when you're a pig, everything you eat becomes a part of you, so that you become a big barrel of educational swill. So this little piggy went to market, and this little piggy stayed home. But wherever those pigs were, they did not know how to differentiate truth from falsehood, and the value of real knowledge from theory. And so white folk laid on us a whole bunch of mess, and he called it education and knowledge and book learning. And we, like the pig, kept our head down, slurped it all up. And then when it came time to produce, we couldn't produce nothing. White folks know that what they've given us as knowledge is a joke. But the wise among us, who have buttressed and complemented what they give with self-knowledge, are able to look into everything that they teach and separate the wheat from the chaff, and take the wheat into the storehouse of knowledge and act on the principles thereof. Elijah Muhammad's sub-motive was to make helpers, to help him in the awesome task that God had laid on his shoulders, the task of raising up a dead nation. Elijah Muhammad was not a selfish man. He was not a man motivated by greed. He wanted people to help him get to you with the word. And everybody that came to him, he would search them to see if they would make a good laborer. And even if they were a plumber and just knew how to sweat a pipe, he would show them how to sweat black people together. Can you do that? When Malcolm went to Philadelphia, Malcolm got a job as a painter just to make a little money. And he wrote the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and told the Honorable Elijah Muhammad he had gotten a job as a painter. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote him a letter saying, do you want to paint the walls of men? Or do you want to paint the hearts of men with the truth? In other words, just like Jesus, he found Peter fishing. He said, come on, get up out of there. I'm going to make you a fisher of men. Why are you going to make me a fisher of men, Jesus? Because I got a mission. And my mission is to retrieve men out of the sea of sin. Will you help me? So Peter came, James came, John came, Mark came, Thomas came. But he didn't find them doing the thing he was doing. Wasn't nobody on that gig. Nobody had that job. So now you're going to make a laborer? Somebody to teach black people? Yes, that's what I really want. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, everybody that came, like the words of Jesus, before me was a thief and a robber. He praised Marcus Garvey and he praised Noble Drew Ali as forerunners. And he honored their work and told all of his followers that it was a good work and a noble work. He didn't like the preachers because the preachers were on the payroll of the slave master. He didn't like the preachers because the preachers were more interested in hooping than in teaching. He didn't like the tune of a preacher. He didn't like it if a man started breaking. I went there that morning. Were you there? He didn't like that. He didn't want none of his ministers to sound like that. He hated it. He said, teach the people. Preach to the people. No more. Listen to this. When he was teaching one day, he came home from the temple. Master Farad Muhammad was there. And so Master Farad asked the others, how did he do? And they were saying he did well. He really preached. There wasn't a dry eye in the temple. Master Farad got a very stern look on his face. And he told him, brother, don't you make my people cry. I came to wipe away their tears. Even if you're teaching good, don't make the people cry. So that's why when we teach, we come before the people with a happy spirit. I teach always with a smile. Because I got good news for you. Your day of suffering is just about over. If you're going to cry here, you're going to cry for joy. when you're trying to make a laborer, a worker. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad did not want proud people. He wanted us to be humble. And you know how some of us were and are. We got these big egos with nothing in our heads. We are very arrogant. We can't wait to get an authority over somebody so we can show off, how powerful we are. Jesus had all that trouble with his crazy disciples. And Elijah Muhammad had all that trouble with us. He was like a man asked to perform a delicate operation with a screwdriver. And he did the best he could. And Malcolm was the best that had come to Elijah Muhammad to represent this teaching. Of all Elijah Muhammad's ministers, in my judgment, Malcolm was top shelf. He always kept the Honorable Elijah Muhammad out front. Wherever he spoke, he said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught me this, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught me that. In fact, when he came to the nation, they were calling Elijah Muhammad Mr. Muhammad. Isn't that right? But when Malcolm got here, they started calling him the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm introduced that. He wanted to see the leader in the dignified position that a man of his quality should be in. Malcolm knew what he was doing. He honored and respected the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's family. He loved all Elijah Muhammad's children, and he was treated by Elijah Muhammad as one of his own sons. Elijah Muhammad loved that man, and that man loved Elijah Muhammad. I never saw a man more fierce in defending Elijah Muhammad than Malcolm X. I learned basic things from Malcolm. He was a wonderful teacher. He was such a good example. I never heard Malcolm cuss. Every now and then on the rostrum he would say hell or damn, but I never heard anything else. I never saw Malcolm smoke, drink, or even hint that he needed one. I never saw Malcolm eat in between meals. The teaching of Elijah Muhammad was one meal a day. And in the 10 years that I knew Malcolm, I never saw Malcolm eat in between meals. Malcolm was a praying man. When I would stay in his home, he would get me up at 4:30 so we could make Salatul Fajr. Malcolm was devout, but Malcolm was revolutionary. And he had a character defect, as we all do. But I heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say that his strength was his greatest weakness. How can a man's strength be his weakness? I've seen men come in the nation, and when they hear the law taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they have the strength to live it. And they became captains, teachers of the law. But they were so strong in the law till they couldn't countenance the weakness of their brothers and sisters in their failure to live up to the law. So their strength became their weakness because they weren't tolerant enough of the shortcomings of others to raise them up to a level of strength. Some of us are like that. Have you ever noticed some of us who can give exercises and do jumping jacks? 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000. We get in front of a class Come on, we're going to do jumping jacks. And we're going to jump jack till he falls out. Just to show I got the endurance. I'm greater than you. See, that's sickness. That's imposing your ego and your vanity on your class. Elijah Muhammad, a marvelous teacher. He taught us humility. And one day he said to me, because I used to boast a lot, I didn't even realize how arrogant I was. And sometimes, you know, the eye beholds everything else except itself. And so, you know, you're looking out, but you're not looking in. And I found myself to be arrogant, but I didn't know this. And the messenger would listen to my tapes, and one day I sat at his table, and he said, brother, you can tell the righteous. They walk the earth in humbleness. Then he pointed to the Holy Quran. He says, Allah loves not any self-conceited boaster, for their boasting is in his ears like the braying of an ass. And the braying of an ass is the most hateful sound in the ears of Allah. Then he said to me, brother, no matter how heavy you are, you can't step through the earth. Now, some of you in here pretty heavy. Some of you weigh over 300 pounds. And next to some of these thin ones, you may feel like a giant. But go stand up next to a mountain and see how big you are. So he says, since you can't step through the earth or equal yourself up to the mountains, why not take your place as one of Allah's creatures and be humble? These are the lessons that he taught me. He taught Malcolm. He taught Brother Abdullah. He taught us all, didn't he, brother? And when we messed up, didn't the Honorable Elijah Muhammad have a way of teaching us and spanking us and punishing us that he made us better? You belong to organizations. These organizations ain't trying to make you better. You'll be the head honcho. You. What is your reason for being the head honcho? You shoot straight. Whatever that means. Ain't nobody trying to make you a better person, challenging you when you mess up. But Elijah Muhammad challenged us. Whenever he felt that we vipped when we should have vopped or deviated, he would stop us and upbraid us and correct us and reprove us and admonish us. And he whipped Malcolm many days to make Malcolm a better man. You weren't there. What do you know about it? Malcolm you fell in love with was made by somebody. And the Farrakhan that you're falling in love with is made by somebody much bigger than he is. You weren't there when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad chastised us. You don't know anything about that man's ability to chastise. His son is in the audience. His son will tell you, nobody came to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that didn't get a whipping. I'm going to say it again. Nobody came to Elijah Muhammad that didn't get a whipping. Am I telling the truth? Did we get whippings? We did. Sometimes we didn't think we deserved them. And he would beat us on general principle, just to see if we had the humility to take a beating when you think you're right. You didn't hear me? I'm telling you what he did to me. I'm not before you as the kind of man that I'm becoming in no vacuum. My mother didn't teach me this. Elijah Muhammad put me on the radio to make a broadcast. He said, brother, I'm going to try you at this broadcast for 4 weeks. And he sent me a letter and he told me what he wanted me to preach. He said, and I will let you know after the 4 weeks if I want you on any longer. After the 4 weeks, I came back, smiling. He said, that was pretty good, brother. You can go on for another 2 weeks. This time you say what you have in your mind. After the other 2 weeks, which made 6 weeks, he said, well, brother, I'll give you 6 more weeks. And he listened. Every time I would make a tape, I would have to send it to him first. He would clear it, then he would send it throughout the country. You know how it is when you get a lollipop that somebody gave you that's theirs, and you start sucking on it till you think it's yours? And then they ask you to give it back, and you get an attitude. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, listen to this carefully. He said, well, brother, you can go on now for 6 years. And all the while I was making the broadcast, I would write each word down and measure each word. It would sometimes take me a week just to make a half-hour broadcast because I strove for perfection. That's the discipline that my mother gave me in trying to make me a musician. I never performed a bad performance, never in my life. I worked hard at my craft so that I could always give my best. My teacher told me at the end of 3 years, he said, brother, don't write your speeches out. Just go and stand up. I said, don't make any notes. He said, no, brother, just go stand up and let Allah speak through you. And I did it for 4 years. And then I did it everywhere I went. I never would make notes. And I can wake up in the morning in the dead of the night, sleep, and preach. And call scriptures from everywhere without looking at a note. Because I studied 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And I studied my teacher. One time in the broadcast, he said, brother, I'll be coming back to the radio next week. Let the people know. Now I've been sucking on that lollipop a long time, brother. Elijah Muhammad said, I want it back now. You've been saying I was coming back. Now you can tell them I'm back. I made a tape. Hearken unto the voice of God. Because see, one thing you can't fool a man that's that wise. He listened to your words, how you form them. He listened to the inflection of your voice and the spirit of you. And he can tell whether you want him to come back or whether you feel bad that he would take his own broadcast back. Like I'm telling you right now, I'm standing in his place. This ain't my place. So I can't get too used to his seat. He may claim it. I'm living in his house, not mine. I may get a knock on the door one day. Do you live here? So a man, in words, should never get comfortable with borrowed goods. And everything you got belongs to somebody else. So why act like it's yours? Always act like what you got is from God.